All right, good morning, Doug. Today we have questions from our viewers. To the viewers, if you have questions you'd like to submit for Doug to discuss in another Q&A, join our Telegram group. There's a link for that in the description of this video. Join the Telegram group and you can submit your questions there, and we will ask and get through as many of them as we can when we have these Q&As, which are typically on Fridays. So, Doug, first off, somebody was watching this interview with you on Donahue in 1980. It's hard to believe how long ago that was now, 1980 though. And we'll link to that in the description because it's a fabulous interview. You will love it. So, but in that, one of the things you said in that interview is you said that you said that it's possible that in 50 years that silver might actually be worth more than gold. And now we're 9 years away from that 50-year sort of milestone you threw out at the time. He just wants to know, what are your thoughts on that today? Have you changed your view on that? What was the reason for even thinking that silver might be higher than gold?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first, got to retro rock a minute. That interview I did with Phil Donahue, when Donahue was the Oprah of the day. I mean, he really was the Oprah of the day. It's funny, after that was posted, and I think it was Jeff Berwick introduced me to somebody who said, I know how to access that and dig it up. And he did. And it was posted and it kind of went viral. When it first went up on the internet, I don't know when that was, 10 years ago, more. And it got up to like 130,000 views, and then that disappeared. And now it's back again. I don't know how these things come and go from the internet, or why something that had a lot of views just disappeared, that channel or whatever it is. Anyway, it's just thinking about this. Anyway, silver. Look, silver is, it used to be, and many times in the past, the primary monetary metal in the ancient world, much more than gold, actually. It was the primary monetary metal. In ancient Greece, silver. Drachmas were silver. And in ancient Rome, the denarius was a silver coin. Yeah, they had the aureus, but that didn't occur very much. So it's actually, since silver has become such an important industrial metal, that it's less important now as a monetary metal. And there's about 3 years of silver supply above ground. In other words, stores of silver that are accessible, kind of inventories of silver, are said to be about 3 years of usage. For gold, it's something like 60 or 70 years of usage. So gold is the monetary metal and silver is an industrial metal. When you get down to copper, the industrial use versus monetary use, it's kind of an interesting curve. I'm not describing this very fully. But to answer the question, silver is much more industrial now than it was even when I made that statement on the Donahue show. And gold has done relatively much better than silver. I mean, what was silver back then? I forget exactly what it was. I'd say it was $10 back then. For many years, it bounced around. After it was freed up, it bounced around at around the $6 level and hit $50, spiked there a couple times. But okay, do I think it's possible now? Look, anything can happen in the world of commodities. Depends on whether some marvelous new technology makes silver just quintessential and the demand goes through the roof. But no, it's increasingly going to be an industrial metal and will fluctuate for those reasons, not for monetary reasons. So no, I don't think so. On the bright side, from a speculator's point of view, is that silver is a much, much smaller market than gold, much, much smaller market. and therefore it's much more volatile than gold. So yeah, I think we're going to see $50 silver in the next year or two. I wouldn't doubt it at all. But reach the price of gold? No, some magic has to happen at this point.
Okay, great. Next question is, if you had $1 million in cash with no other assets, how would you allocate that capital to survive what's coming?
You know, it depends on how gloomy you are about the near-term prospects of the US and the world. I'm pretty gloomy. So I have a lot, and I do, in cash, physical, gold and silver. So a lot there. I'm counting on a bubble in gold mining stocks, which are very, very cheap now in relative and absolute terms, both. I mean, this is like the second huge kick at the cat for gold stocks, if I'm right. So I'm way overweight in gold stocks. Got a lot of real estate, which I've just picked up over the years. Good thing, bad thing. You can make all kinds of arguments, which I have, as to why real estate could be good or bad, depending on this or that. I have no strong opinions on it. I mean, apartments in New York that sell for $100 million, don't want to own them, you know. Farmland in Nebraska that's productive, yeah, I want to own it. So it depends. But look, right now, own a lot of gold, have a good bit of silver in the form, preferably of $1 silver rounds. I think that's the best way to own silver. Build a good sized portfolio of gold stocks, quality gold stocks that aren't burning matches, which most of them are, and own some real estate and diversify outside of whatever country you're in, so that all your eggs aren't in one political basket, because as great as the financial risks are, the political risks are greater. So I guess that sums it up. But you know, we don't really go into investment advice per se on this blog, because you know, you shouldn't make your investment decisions based on an argument that is just verbal. I mean, that's not what you call deep research. I mean, it's not the type of thing that made Benjamin Graham rich, or Warren Buffett for that matter, as main student. So these are just, you know, broad concepts, not investment advice per se.
From a philosophical point of view towards your investments, though, it seems like you're oriented toward hedges and speculation. So hedges in case of chaos, in case of bad things, and that's where you have gold and silver and real productive real estate. You know, at least nothing else, real estate that's a home, so you have a place that you could be. And those seem like hedges to me, insurance against the world not going right. And then there's the speculations which are really more on like the crypto side and on gold stocks. Do you think it's fair to describe them that way? It's kind of like you have almost like a maybe Taleb's barbell strategy, where you have these you know, conservative insurance related oriented investments, and then the other side you have these really high potential upside investments.
Yes, I think that is a good way to define it. And as far as real estate's concerned, I would say desirable real estate, type of thing that people that have money might want to buy from you because it's pretty, or all kinds of different reasons. So real estate that's desirable.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next one is someone saw you talking about uranium a couple of years ago, and it'd be nice to know what your thoughts are on uranium today. And kind of, I think for people who don't understand uranium and the uranium market, maybe just explain a little bit about the market and kind of your views on that specific commodity.
Yeah, I've been a uranium bull for many, many years. And the reason for that is actually I've always been kind of a boy scientist, always been interested in science and technology, notwithstanding the fact that I hate my cell phone and actually I hate my computer too and like to stay away from them both. But it's got nothing too much to do with broad concepts of science. And my opinion has long been, and I believe it's a correct opinion, is that nuclear power is without question the safest and the cheapest and the cleanest form of mass power generation. And yeah, I know all the problems, I know all the arguments about these things, but they're either incorrect or hysterical. So anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan of nuclear power. Now we're getting to uranium, which is nuclear fuel. And of course, if you look into it, you might find that thorium, which is, let me see, uranium's number 92 on the periodic table. I think thorium is 90. And the argument's often made, and I think probably correctly, that thorium is a much better nuclear fuel than uranium. There's a lot more of it around. It doesn't have the problems of waste that uranium does. It can't be transformed into bomb grade material. All these heavy elements can be transformed, but not easily. So actually, look, I'd rather be a fan of thorium than I am of uranium, but that's just not the way things are done today. Yeah, I'm a big fan of nuclear fuel. So how do you invest in this? And it's a volatile market. The last uranium bull market occurred, I think it was about the year, God, I might be getting the years wrong, but I'm close. In around the year 2000, uranium was selling for about $9 or $10 a pound. The costs of mining it were generally about $20 a pound, but you needed, millions of pounds a year to feed the 400 and something reactors in the world. So something was going to give, either we weren't going to have electric power and 20% of American electric power does come from nuclear plants still. France, it's over 50%. So either the price of uranium was going up or the plants were going to shut down. So it was a great speculation. And, it exploded from $10 to $140 a pound over the next 5 years or something like that. And the number of little companies that pretended to be uranium miners went from like 5 real ones to roughly 400 wannabes. And I think we're kind of back there now. So yeah, I'm a big fan of uranium. And I think if you buy uranium stocks now with looking out, hold them for 2-3 years anyway. Yeah, I think you're gonna get several times on your money and maybe much more if there's a mania.
I do remember I heard for the first time a very compelling presentation on uranium, probably from Rick Rule, about a decade ago, and I remember being very excited about it at the time, and I think that uranium had some blips, some uptrends, and in that time period, but never really broke loose. At least I haven't followed the market that closely over the last decade, but never really broke loose yet. And so it seems it's like it's still. I imagine that a lot of supply must have continued to go offline with these commodities over time because the price languished for quite a while.
Yeah, and of course, uranium is a very political commodity too, because after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they were downgrading, it's not the word I want, taking apart most of their nuclear arsenal, and that high weapons grade uranium in those bombs, which is to say 80 to 100% U-235, it was being denatured to around 4%, which is what you use for nuclear reactors. So there was a huge supply problem coming from all these weapons that were being taken apart. Well, that's gone, but it's still a highly political thing because, you want to build a bomb. Uranium's really the way to go. So that's what you need to do it. So, but not just any uranium, because you've got different isotopes. And the uranium you mine is uranium-238. Only a tiny little portion of that's uranium-235. And that's what you need. Yeah, it's still very political and it's highly controlled and so forth. But there are a number of really interesting uranium stocks right now, including a uranium royalty company called Uranium Royalty. And in fact, I think they just bought the royalty on the two biggest uranium mines, two richest, I should say, uranium mines in the world, in Canada. Jesus, I know the names of these things, MacArthur Lake, and I forget the other one. So that's a great way to do it because buying royalties on mining companies is really by far the safest way to invest in mining in general. And it's going to work for uranium too. So there's a stock tip.
Yeah, there you go.
But don't buy the stock just because I tipped it and I own a lot of it. I mean, it's a big mistake when people do that. I take no responsibility for how people, use that tidbit, that fun fact, if you would.
Exactly. It gives you a place to begin your research if you're curious about it, but do your own due diligence. Okay, so we have talked about the collapse of civilizations a fair amount. In fact, we had an episode just devoted to that a couple of days ago, and somebody asks a great question about that. They say, we understand, the different things that might cause a civilization to collapse, because we covered some of those. But he asks, what about the ascendancy of civilization? What are the conditions and factors that move us from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance or the Enlightenment, or from illiterate barbarian tribes to the civilizational peaks of classical antiquity?
Yeah, that is a hell of a good question, actually. It's an important question. It's an astute question. Yeah. Well, I've actually thought about it a little bit, and it's a good question because I think it's easier to put your finger on why something declines and falls than why it arises, kind of. Because you can say, yeah, you arise as a civilization because you produce more than you consume, and you value technology, and you value peace, and you value trade and production. That's all true. But that really hasn't been studied as much as why civilizations collapse. There's been a lot on why civilizations collapse. And one thing that's kind of interesting is that I know that kids, I don't play these games myself, but I've seen them played and I know they're played. Like, is it Minecraft where you build a civilization from, you start out?
There's SimCity as well. There's been a lot of those games over the years. Yeah, but Minecraft's
So you start out, building stuff out of sticks and stones, and then you go into high tech and it builds from there. Interesting. So it's nice that, I guess some of these kids in the basement aren't just playing first-person shooter games. They're also doing things that make you think about, well, what comes next to make things better. Cause for optimism. But I don't know how to answer that question in any kind of detail now, other than to say it's a really important question.
Are there any factors that come to mind though? Like, technology being one, for instance. There's I mean, certainly the emergence of new technology can dramatically improve productivity. That can lead to, time for developing, making your economy more efficient or whatever. I mean, is there anything you could point to that are some factors, maybe not the causal factor directly, but at least you see these things along the way?
Well, I forget which one of our sessions it was. I think I enumerated what I consider to be the 12 founding factors that made Western civilization unique. And they're all important. And actually, certainly as a group, they're unique to Western civilization. I mean, not that there haven't been other civilizations that have been, Chinese civilization, interesting, but not in any way comparable to that of the West. I mean, you got the West and the rest. So those 12 factors that I mentioned, and I can't spout them off the top of my head right now.
I'll link to the video though. I'll link to the video. You can check it out.
That's I think what you need. And I mean, not that at this point, the Chinese and I don't know what other civilization there is besides the Chinese. Well, the Japanese, that's really a little bit different. But I think they're making it only insofar as they're using those factors that the West has shown works. It's kind of the way I see it. I mean, I'd like somebody to point out where I'm wrong or I'm missing something. I may be, but
okay. All right. Well, I will link to that video, so encourage people to check that out. Next question, and I think this is a great question for the day. It just shows you kind of the zeitgeist where nobody trusts anything anymore at all. The question is, I want to know Doug's take on space. Does he buy the moon story, the Mars rover, etc.? It seems to smell to me.
That's funny. There's an old friend of mine, Barry Reed. Barry lives in Southern California. Anyway, we've been buddies for years. Barry became famous. I'm answering the question now because he founded the Eden Underground Press and wrote a book called The Paper Trip, which was about how to get a second or a third identity. And The Paper Trip became a huge underground bestseller. It's totally out of date now, it wouldn't work anymore. But anyway, one of the books that Barry published when he was big in the publishing business in those days was a book by, I think it was Bill Casing was the guy's name, that was the big promoter of We Never Went to the Moon, okay? So I'm kind of familiar with the background of this meme. And, I think it's nonsense. Yes, I really believe we went to the moon for lots of different reasons. And yes, the rover on Mars, I believe it's really on Mars. It's really happening. We're really getting photographs. And, Voyager 1 and 2, these things are actually happening. So, look, it's smart not to believe everything, but that doesn't mean that you don't believe anything. So, and it is smart to believe less and less of what you hear today, especially when all these morons out there are saying that the science is on their side. It's actually discrediting the idea of science, which, builds a fire under these movements. Well, these memes about we never went to the moon. Forget about all the other stuff we're doing, which I do believe. So don't let your skepticism get completely out of control, because then that's going to discredit the concept of skepticism, which is really bad.
That's a good point. Okay. Next question is, why is gold shitting the bed during reflation, rising rates?
Well, because markets fluctuate. I mean, look, all this money's pouring into society now. I mean, and a lot more to come. And the average guy really doesn't know anything about economics, just a fact. And gold and silver are really not on his radar screen at all. So they're looking at the stock market right now. And these idiotic fund managers are putting money into the bond market, which is a classic example of return-free risk. So the market fluctuates. And all I can say is, hey, take advantage of it. There's no reason why. There's no immediate cause and effect between the economy doing well, which it's not, and the stock market doing well, which it is. I mean, these things are often indirect and delayed. So don't let a day-to-day up quote or down quote change your view of the world. It's a big mistake.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that you got to do is just always pull back and look at a different time period. So if you're looking at like month to date, pull back and look at the 3 months, look at the 6 months, look at the year, because you could be so swept up in what's happening in the moment with price action, and it just messes with your psychology. It can make you make bad decisions. And I also think like the financial news has made us think that there's like that there is a known cause for every effect that we see. Anytime if the stock market goes down, they come on and they go, well, here's the stock market was down today, here's why. They have like as if the answers are always readily available, and it's not just the machinations of the market, that it might have nothing whatsoever to do with the cause that they're suggesting.
Yeah, you watch TV and you listen to these talking heads, and the way you become a popular talking head on TV is by being really certain and beating the table about something that the public's got its eye on. So the only reason I ever watch the news on CNN or MSNBC or Fox or any of these things, although I've got to say Fox is not as bad as the others. They at least have some reasonable people. But the main reason I like to listen to the news sometimes is because it gives me an idea what other people believe, or at least what other people are supposed to believe. But other than that, it's got no value.
Right. It's not news. It's
It's not
program.
news. No, something really important happens, I'll find out about it. I don't need some blow-dried, promoter to tell me about it, his interpretation of it. For other than the reason I want to know what the hoi polloi are supposed to think.
Okay. So next question is, Bitcoin at 20,000 was the time to get in, but where's the limit, if any, and what is up with gold and silver? So I guess you already talked about gold and silver, but I mean, 20K was the right point to get in, I guess. I mean, you could argue that $20 was the right point to get in, and $2,000.
It was a better time. Right. I mean, actually, like I said, I got into Bitcoin at $13 because, somebody gave me a physical Bitcoin of $13, which I still have, incidentally. Haven't even put it into the digital universe yet. But I don't know. Look, I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. And I hate being bullish on things that are getting expensive. But you got to compare the current value of Bitcoin to other financial assets out there. And it's still pretty small. I mean, I guess it'd make a lot of people feel better if they did a 1,000-for-1 split of Bitcoin. Then it was $50. Oh, that sounds cheaper, more reasonable. Right. But I guess the market cap of all possible Bitcoins is like $1 trillion, which is really, really small relative to the amounts of currency and bonds and stocks and God knows what. And there's going to be more of a panic into Bitcoin as they print more dollars. So yeah, I hate to say it, but yeah, I think it's going a lot higher.
Okay. Well, I don't hate you saying that because I believe it too, and I own some Bitcoin, so I want it to go higher.
Yeah, me too.
Frightening. It is frightening a little bit when you see it moving these huge numbers up, and you're like, because it's almost an indicator not of your portfolio going up, but the rest of the world decaying. It's happening. I think it's not totally proportionate. Like I think it goes up more than the world is decaying, but it's a sign that basically things are going wrong elsewhere.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what did Germans think back in 1923 when, it took bushel baskets of money, or Zimbabweans recently? And, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but the head of the Zimbabwe Central Bank, and in Harare, incidentally, by far the biggest, tallest, most important building in the city is the central bank building. It towers above everything else in that little town. Well, it's not so little anymore, but it's pretty destitute. Anyway, the chairman of the Central Bank of Zimbabwe is a friend of mine. I spent a lot of time with him last time I was in Zimbabwe, talking about currency and what it does, and his name is Gideon Gono, and the disaster that printing this money up created. And I asked him, Gideon, listen, you're a smart guy. What was going on here? Why were you signing your name on these bills and so forth? He said, we had no alternative. We had to pay the army, and we had nothing to pay the army with except money that we printed. And they accepted it. And that's all there was to it. And he gave me, and this is a fact, and I have it someplace, a typed paper that he wrote for the benefit of Comrade Mugabe, who's now joined the Choir Invisible, saying why Zimbabwe should have a gold Zimbabwe dollar. So talk about something strange. There's a little factet that I promise you're not going to hear anyplace else in the blogosphere, because only I know that, because I think I'm the only one other than Comrade Mugabe who has a copy of his paper, the guy that signed the $100 trillion bills. Anyway.
Wow. That's amazing.
These crazy things happen all the time, and they'll continue to happen. I mean, Argentina's going to totally destroy its currency again. It may take a little bit longer now because soybean and wheat and corn prices are up. So there's going to be money for the government to steal in the short run. But yeah, it's going to happen to the US. I'm just increasingly convinced the US is absolutely going to destroy the US dollar. There's no way out at this point, no way out. And they're not going to let a credit collapse happen. Well, anything can happen, but they'll do their best. So that's why I'm so gloomy about general prospects and so bullish on certain investments.
Okay. We did a talk about charities the other day, and so we got a couple questions in response to that. It wasn't certainly the most popular one we've ever done. I think clearly a sacred cow for a lot of people. But someone asks, should I continue donating money to the Mises Institute, or is it futile to fund such academics?
Well, I forget who it was that said this, or words to this effect. But here's what happens with institutions. They start as a good idea, a bright idea to solve a problem. Okay, super. And then what happens is they evolve into a movement or a business, or, they become big, because you got to be big to solve a problem, or get bigger to solve a problem if it's a big problem. And then they inevitably evolve into a scam or a swindle or a racket. So that's what happens inevitably. So right now, the Mises Institute, I think Lou Rockwell runs it still. I'm not sure, I think he does. So it's still at the stage 1, moving into stage 2. I'm sure in X number of years, it'll turn into a racket if they become successful. They'll raise a lot of money, hire a lot of cubicle dwellers, and basically be in the money raising business. So yeah, if you want to give some money to an intellectual institution, I would say that it's a good choice. Caveat with what I just said. I would not give money to the Libertarian Party. I mean, that is it's actually shameful. The Libertarian Party, it's like a little toilet bowl for people to swim around in that can't make it in the big cesspool. That's basically what the Libertarian Party is. So don't do that. The Mises Institute's a good choice if you must.
Okay, good. You asked a question that's coming up later about the Libertarian Party, so good. Let's see. Next question is, They want to know if you have been following the situation with the mining giant Rio Tinto. Apparently, the company accidentally destroyed what was deemed to be a sacred cave by indigenous groups in Australia. It has now cost the job of the company's CEO and now another chairman. And then it says, notice the woke language used by the company in today's Financial Times. Quote, there's no realistic prospect of Rio rebuilding relationships, trust, and reputation while those responsible for the degradation of its culture and social performance remain on the board, said James Fitzgerald of the Australian Centre for Corporate Responsibility. What are your thoughts on that? Have you been following it at all?
I haven't. Uh, I generally avoid the shares of big bureaucratic companies, and companies get big, they always get bureaucratic. So, and actually I was unaware of this. So you just can't read everything. So it's good to learn that. But look, the problem could be solved, should have been solved by, if they were mucking around, I don't know what they're mining there in the outback of Australia or wherever it is, they should have bought the land from the locals and then do what they wanted with it. And don't want to hear any complaints. You sold the land and that's the end of the story. You know, your cave is going to get bulldozed. So Fido. This is typical political correctness from these big companies. They probably cut some kind of a deal with the government to push the natives off what was tribal land. So it's the usual thing, just like what happened with the Indians in this country. And, you know, I have no sympathy, I don't, for the chairman and president. I mean, they're probably just corporate suits that are, you know, were probably competent geologists at one time and now are in the business of backslapping and backstabbing because they're big corporate guys, political operators is basically what all these top corporate guys are. So I got no sympathy for them. I'm sure they're going to get golden parachutes and retire as centimillionaires or so. Yeah, just further proof of, you know, how badly we're on the world is in general.
Okay. What would you do if your wife doesn't want to leave the country, as all of her family is here? Secondly, I guess he says, are there any good second passports left? You know, that are any good at all? He has a Norwegian passport and a permanent residency in Canada.
Oh, well, that's pretty good. Well, a Canadian passport is certainly a good choice. I mean, I'd get that for sure. It used to be, not so long ago, you could become a Canadian with only 3 years of permanent residence. And while you were becoming that, you could put your assets in a trust so they wouldn't be beaten up by the Canadian tax system until you actually became a citizen. I don't know if that works anymore. And I think it's 5 years. They changed it to 5 years to become a Canadian citizen. That's what I think. So, you know, Canadian passport, certainly one of the best. I don't know, as is a Norwegian passport, frankly.
Yeah.
So what should you do? Your wife doesn't want to leave Canada, I guess, not Norway.
Canada.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the way to solve that is to find a really neat place to go on vacation. And the two of you go on vacation and make the vacation maybe longer next year, and maybe she'll groove into it.
Exactly. Yep. I think it's often a great way to have a bolt hole anyway. You know, have a place where you like spending some time. And you know, if things go bad in your whatever your country of residence is, you just go on vacation. You just go to your place, and maybe you only plan on being there for a couple of weeks, and maybe it turns into a couple months, and who knows from there.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you won't antagonize your neighbors they won't accuse you of making the chicken run because, hey, I'm just taking a vacation and hanging out a little bit longer this year.
Exactly. Let's see. When we've talked about the the U.S. printing a bunch of currency, and someone asks, aren't the Chinese printing even more currency than the U.S. is, and aren't they even in bigger trouble financially than the U.S. might be?
That's an astute question. I think the answer to that is yes, and yes, actually, but different kind of trouble for different reasons. Because, well, to start with, one of the reasons why Mao triumphed over Chiang Kai-shek was because Chiang destroyed the currency. And that really pissed off the average Chinese. So that really helped in Mao's ascent. And, some of these guys that are running China today, that was recent enough that they still know something about that. It's meaningful. So maybe the Chinese won't be that stupid. And of course, the Chinese are the world's largest gold producer. And even then, they're gold importers, and there are gold shops all over Chinese, where the average Chinese guy owns a lot of gold. So that kind of augurs well. But at the same time, their banking system is full of loans made to politically favored enterprises that may not ever be repaid, probably won't be. If the world economy goes down, China's not exporting anymore. A lot of these politically favored enterprises go under. Banks can't get their loan back. Bank can't pay off Mrs. Wong when she goes to make a withdrawal. She'll be very unhappy. So then they're going to have to print up even more money, but they're printing up a lot of money already. So it's a confused picture, but it's different. It's bad, very bad, but it's different than the US. I think if I was starting a business, maybe I was a Martian and wanted to start a business on planet Earth. My first choice wouldn't be either the US or China, but between the two of them at this point, I might go to China over prefer, because at least, they're actually pro-business. And, but who knows?
Seems like this is a global phenomenon, though, where the debasement of currency seems to be happening everywhere. That's for sure.
Yes, it is.
Let's see. Let's kind of skip some of these a little bit. Okay, so this is a moral question, Doug. It said in a recent episode, you said something. You said you thought it was fine that the Romans left babies out to exposure to die, but you also said that you claim not to hunt because he doesn't like killing things. So I'm curious as to how Doug feels it's okay to kill a baby through neglect, but it doesn't sit well with him to kill an animal to eat. I enjoy hearing Doug's many thoughts and agree with the vast majority of them, but this seems like a moral contradiction. Perhaps I've misheard him.
No, it's quite correct on both counts. Look, you have a baby, you can't support it or whatever. That baby is still at the stage where it's somebody's property. Somebody's got to take care of it. Now, who's going to make the decision as to what happens to the baby? I'd say the parents. And you can say that they are doing the morally wrong thing, or you might say, yeah, they're doing the morally right thing for reasons that we could come up with. So that's up to the parents. They should, and of course, in the ancient world, the pater familias had complete control of his family. You didn't have to just be a baby. You could be a son or a daughter or even a wife, or absolutely a slave, and you could be killed and there was no recourse. That was just the way it was. You were kind of property. Okay. People could disapprove for whatever reasons they might have, but that was the way things worked. All right. So, no, I have no problem with that. Would I disapprove of it? Well, I don't know. I don't know the baby personally. Maybe the baby is the next Hitler for all I know. So it's up to the parents.
I think there's two things that get conflated here. One is that you're talking about something that happened in history, and you provide context for like what's going on. That this is the way things were done, and the parent certainly, the parent. There wasn't anyone else that could decide that, so the parents, of course, decided. And I think in that episode, I remember you going fine, and fine is in like that's the way it was. Now, and the other question is, would you want to go and hunt? Like, would you want to go and kill an animal? Like you prefer not to. Like, if you needed to, you would, but you prefer not to. I think you said, and I think the same. So one is what you specifically would do, and another is an observation about something, a long time ago. And so I think the question is, would you personally be in favor of killing a baby? I think that's a better question, because that's a more equivalent to whether
Yeah, well, this is the big deal. I mean, I understand politically in the U.S. One of them, it's Roe versus Wade and abortion, prohibition, anti-abortion, whatever. Uh, I wouldn't kill my baby. I mean, I can only speak for myself. And if somebody else kills their baby, I'd say, well, this is a person that, has shown some bad judgment in probably several different ways that got him to that stage. Okay, so what are you going to do about it? I can only speak for myself. I wouldn't kill my baby. And as far as hunting is concerned, I've hunted, both mammals and birds and fish. And frankly, I mean, I just find it kind of, well, anesthetic. I mean, I don't enjoy it. I don't personally enjoy killing things. I mean, that's all I can say about it. Done it. I understand the sport aspects of it, love guns. I don't even like fishing, frankly. I feel bad for the damn fish. I really do. So, not my bag. But at the same time, yeah, I eat meat, I eat fish, I eat fowl, and I understand that somebody else had to kill them. Okay, you can say, is that intellectually dishonest? Well, this is a subject for a whole conversation. So, make your own choice.
Okay. Someone else has Doug ever heard of the Piri-Reis map? Piri-Reis map, maybe? And if so, what do you make of it? I think that's the map. I gave you a link to it. I believe that's a map from the Ottoman Empire of the globe, of what they thought was the known world at the time.
Oh, God, there's so many of these old maps. Is this before they knew that the globe was a globe?
I think no, it has those elements to it. Definitely, it was around 1510. I think is when I looked on Wikipedia, something like
Oh,
that.
well, I don't know. No particular thoughts. I guess knowledge advances. We know better today. I hope the questioner is not a flat Earth person. I don't think there's much in the way of proof for a flat Earth, although there are apparently people that actually believe that today.
There are a lot of people that believe it. Yeah, it's I just think it's our faith is people's faith is so undermined in everything, and that if they don't have a tool set to observe to know on their own whether or not something is true, you could think everything is a conspiracy. I mean, and you're not, and a lot of it might be. A lot of the world, like what we see, is not true.
Yeah,
So
I'm a great believer in, you know, see something and believe it. But then again, in today's digital world, you can't even believe what you see anymore. Listen, I used to have a friend in Aspen, and he was a very nice guy and surprisingly sound in a lot of ways. But he actually believed in the hollow earth theory. Talk about the flat earth theory, that's one thing. He believed in the hollow earth theory, where supposedly someplace in the Arctic, there was a big hole and there was a civilization. I'm not kidding you. So listen, there's all kinds of things out there.
yeah, there are. Okay, so someone asks, what if you could only subscribe to one publication or junior resource stock that provided junior resource stock recommendations? Which one would you recommend?
Junior resource stocks.
No, if they were going to subscribe to one publication that covered those, which publication would it be? Is the question.
Well, I know a lot of people in that business, so that's a question I hate to answer because what's going to happen? I'm going to make one guy feel good and make a bunch of other guys think I hate him. So
Yes.
I
Pass.
can't answer that. I'll say this: there are some very good ones, and there are some absolutely horrible ones, and some in between. It's not much of an answer, but that's the best I can do.
Okay. Um, Next question is about crypto, and I don't know how much you'll know about this. This might actually be we might have to pass this along to Marco Witzer or someone like him. They ask, if you're familiar with decentralized finance, if you've heard anything about some of the tools that are being built within crypto for decentralized finance, and if so, what are your thoughts on that?
Don't have any really good thoughts on it. That's my expertise doesn't, the technical details of Bitcoin and all that, you know, I think somebody like Marco is the guy to talk to it. Although Marco tends to take a very partisan view of these things. He's not like an objective observer. I mean, he's very pro all this.
Yeah, he's definitely an advocate for it, which still he's got lots of good knowledge and information about it for sure.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I'm generally absolutely on his side. I'm even actually an advisor to his fund for what that's worth. But no comment, actually. I hate to talk about things that I just don't feel confident talking about.
got it. Here's one that I'll answer just because it's somewhat related. It says, "How can one invest in blockchain technology and not cryptocurrency?" Because people say, "Well, I don't like Bitcoin, but I like but the technology that powers it is really the great innovation." This is what people have been saying for the last, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years now. And I would say one of the strange things about you can invest in companies that are specifically bringing technologies that leverage blockchain to the market, and but a lot of times they'll be as an angel investor, or as part of a VC fund or something. So that's the way a lot of times you have to participate in those, except for the fact that a lot of cryptocurrencies, the current you can by buying the currency, you are really investing in the technology, and Ethereum is a really good example of that. I mean, the way you invest in Ethereum, this incredible, smart contract blockchain technology, is to own Ethereum. And so it's like there are ways to participate in these things, and actually through the cryptocurrency is often the way to do it. So I'll leave it there. So next question, Doug. Someone says they're an old movie fan and they think the look of American crime movies and TV from the 50s to the 70s have a style and simplicity that was lost after the 80s. They say it's similar here in the UK where they are. My question is, was there a major societal change that happened around that time that that's apparent in the TV and film as it changed from the 50s through the 70s and on?
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because, as it turns out, it was only like 2 days ago I was watching, I think it was like a 1948 movie um, with Humphrey Bogart called Knock on Any Door. I think that was the name. A strange title for that movie. And so, yeah, I'm actually a fan of old film noir, which a lot of those things are, with, uh, hard-bitten detectives, Sam Spade and stuff like that, Maltese Falcon kind of stuff. So I like those things. But so have things changed? My understanding, and what I've been told by people that know about these things, and my observations fit it, is that today it seems that most movies are made for teenage boys. Now, maybe that's going to change because I don't know if theaters are going to make a comeback or a meaningful comeback or not. So maybe teenage boys won't be the audience for these things anymore. But and there are good movies being made currently on, you turn on Netflix or HBO and there's lots of stuff, and some of it's really good. But was there a big change? Well, one change is that the world actually has become woke. And it's insinuated throughout all the movies and series that are being made today, where these woke ideas are just totally infiltrated. So I don't know. has there really been a change, or is it just the natural evolution of society where, people don't read the kind of stuff they used to read? I mean, does anybody read Tom Swift and the Hardy Boys anymore? I don't think so. So,
I made my son read
uh,
Hardy Boys.
wait a minute, that's a problem.
Yep.
Yeah, I actually I have a Hardy Boys here that somehow wound up in my hands, and I was reading it the other day. So have the values and back of Tom Swift and the Hardy Boys, and I guess Nancy Drew. I never read any of her stuff, but I think it's the same genre. So have the values just vanished and dissipated? The people aren't interested? I don't know. But maybe Harry Potter, kind of in the same genre, it's replaced it. I don't know. I mean, things change.
Okay.
Is it disturbing, or is it good or bad? Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, everything to do with wokeism and SJW and all the rest of it, yeah, I think it's bad in lots of ways that we've discussed. But who knows what the next evolution is going to be? We're going to be living in a science fiction world pretty soon anyway.
Sorry, it's just so many questions. I want to make sure we get through them pretty quickly here. You've referred to the so-called philanthropic foundation set up by Buffett and Gates as pissing away capital. If that's true, how should a wealthy person, God, I can't talk today. How should a wealthy person better allocate his or her wealth, in particular on his or her death, so as not to waste it or disrupt it, or so as not to waste? At that.
I think we talked about that the other day, basically, but without repeating that whole thing on charity and philanthropism we did last week or something like that. Look, the bottom line is this: if you really want to help humanity, don't give your money away to poor people who are just going to piss it away and survive another day, and then they die and the world's no better off. That's perhaps not very nicely stated, but that's what it boils down to. If you're a wealthy person and you invented a widget or a thingamabob, well, don't destroy your capital, invent more of them, because that's what benefits the world, not giving away the money to people that basically probably don't deserve it and won't do anything productive with it. So that's what you should do. If you're a philanthropist, make more money. And when you die, at this point, the government is going to take half of your money, basically. So, and they're going to do horrible, disastrous, counterproductive things with. So your first obligation is to deny the state that money. Well, you can put it into a foundation, and that'll do it. But foundations, just like we were talking about earlier, good idea to kind of a business to a scam and a racket, like the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Foundation, all of them, are taken over by absolutely the wrong kind of people. So it's a real problem. I mean, like I said the other day, hey, maybe what you do, other than the money that you can shelter from taxes, maybe just buy a whole bunch of gold coins, and when you die, you give them to people that you think deserve it, will do something worthy with them. And so what's the government going to do then? The money disappeared. You can say from the grave, so sue me, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
So.
Okay. So let's see. Let me get to the next one then. What do you think about the euro? Where is it going? Will the breakup of the EU continue? Will the euro outlast the dollar? What are your thoughts?
Well, on the one hand, these people are not only trying to hold the European Union together and hold the countries within the European Union together, most of which are actually falling apart. So both things are happening. Can't even, I doubt they're going to be able to hold most of the countries together, France, Spain, Italy, even Germany. Forget about holding the EU together itself. But talking about the euro, if the US dollar is an IOU nothing, which it is, the euro is a who owes you nothing. It's not backed by anybody in particular, anybody's tax revenues or anything. So it's a real chimera. So no, I wouldn't own euros at all, except, to go out and buy a Coke with at a local hot dog stand, that type of thing. They're great for that. But no, I don't want to have anything to do with euros.
Okay.
They're printed on very nice paper. They're very artistic, though. I gotta say that.
They really are. They're much more beautiful than the US dollars for sure.
Yeah.
Several episodes ago, you mentioned skydiving, and someone asks, what is it that got you interested in skydiving?
Well, actually, I started flying planes before that. And I gave that up because, frankly, I don't like being in small planes. I mean, it doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid of them in any way, but, they're uncomfortable and bumpy and kind of slow and kind of a. So I got into skydiving just because I was just drawn to it. It's interesting. It's worthwhile doing, but if you do it, you should do it more than once. And when I started out doing it, you started out with static lines, and you did 5 static line jumps and then increasingly long delays. And today, I think they start out, and of course, the technology has changed entirely. It's changed twice, actually, in these years. I mean, I started out with military canopies, which everybody starts out with or did, and then moved to a type of chute called a paracommander, which kind of looks like a parachute, but it's got lots of holes in it, kind of. And now they all use flying mattresses, basically parafoils, we used to call them. But I don't know, it just seemed like a good idea at the time. And I had 59 jumps. And then I stopped jumping when I went on a treasure hunting expedition for 3 months, and I completely lost all my money. I came back from that treasure hunting expedition with just about zero. So skydiving is a relatively expensive sport. It is.
Yeah.
So never got back.
How old were you at that time when you were doing all the jumps?
Let me think. I can tell you, I would have been late 20s.
All right. I've only done it once, and it was much more like a roller coaster ride than anything else. I mean, just in that I was like a passive participant for the most part. I just did the tandem jump. They either start you off with this tandem jump, where you're basically connected to a guy behind you, instructor,
Yeah.
or you can do the static line, which is, at like I think that's like 3,000 feet or something like that. The static line instead.
That's yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it's fun. And it's terrifying to start with, but like somebody told me when I was just starting out, he said, look, don't worry. You do this a few more weekends, it'll be just like stepping out of your car in the parking lot. And he was right. So I had some, really fun adventures in midair doing that. For 30-second delays, generally speaking, because at least then, I suppose it can't be much different now. Generally, to get above a 30-second delay, in other words, to fly, you need to get up to 7,500 feet above ground altitude. It's diminishing returns, expensive with small planes to fly higher. So that's usually where you go, is 30-second delay. It's fun. I think everybody should do it. And bungee jumping too. And I think bungee jumping is actually scarier than skydiving. That's my personal feeling.
Totally agree. There's something about the reality of, like, you can't really capture the scale when you step out of the plane. It's just hard to really perceive the distance. But when you're jumping off a bridge, I mean, it feels very real.
Yeah, it really does feel suicidal. And
Yeah.
and not only that, but your feet are tied together, which, makes it feel like an execution.
Yeah, exactly. A mob hit or something. Um, all right. Last question here was when we had, it says, in the interview with Doug's friend from Monaco, when he asked what he was investing in, Koala mentioned fine cigars. It appeared he was highlighting his own interest in them, but also as a play on luxury tangible assets. Doug also frequently mentions going to parties to network and people who come to parties empty handed. Does Doug see investing in high end tobacco and alcohol as a way to invest in one's social circle, assuming you're trying to get in good favor with people who are richer and smarter than yourself?
Well, I don't know. I smoke cigars because I really enjoy puffing on a really nice stogie. Um, and I know Kolya feels that same way. And so do all the cigar aficionados that I know. We just enjoy the smoke and the atmosphere, which a nice smoke brings, and generally combined with a nice drink. And it's contemplative, and it's not like smoking cigarettes, which, are like a quick hit bad habit. Cigars are not quick hits; they're all day suckers, and I don't see them as a bad habit. So I don't know. Listen, it's just the more things that you can have an appreciation of, the more social circles that you can move in. I mean, everybody knows how to drive a car. Okay, that's cool. You need to, but not everybody has an appreciation of real quality automotive machinery. And if you know something about it enough to appreciate it, well, now you can move with the car guys or a separate group. And same thing for motorcycles. I mean, yeah, there's a motorcycle. Maybe I know how to ride it, maybe I don't. But there are connoisseurs of this type of thing. So this is, from a social point of view, this is the advantage of knowing these things.
Yeah, definitely. And there are interesting conversations that happen. And like I don't smoke cigars, but I've definitely, a lot of my friends do on occasion do it, and I like the conversations that seem to take place. I remember a few times sitting around with you and Mark Ford, for instance, and just listening to the back and forth between the two of you, and it's a relaxed, totally different environment than you might otherwise get, and it seems to accompany a cigar and a nice drink all the time. I mean, it's good.
Yeah, it really leads to yeah, a non-argumentative discussion, taking time, enjoyable. Yeah, cigars are wonderful. I mean, the people that have worked so hard to outlaw cigars, among other tobacco products, I mean, I see them as underneath the social veneer, kind of criminal personalities, busybodies, don't like to see other people having a good time. I mean,
Right.
for the same reason that they once outlawed coffee shops, because when people would sit down in the old days and have a cup of coffee, as opposed to just get drunk with the beer or something like that, they might get into trouble and work to overthrow the government.
Right.
So I hate people like that.
Yeah, still the stimulating conversation that might come from that versus the sort of dulled and degraded conversation that might come from drunkenness is dangerous.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, we have a lot more questions, honestly, but we've gone really long, so I'm just going to cut it off from here. And appreciate the questions, and we'll do this again next week. So thanks a lot, Doug, and have a great weekend.
Thanks, Matt. Same to you.